This is an exclusive here. This is not something I say very publicly. No. This is really good. Like, you should keep going with this, dude. I'm afraid to open my MetaMask sometimes, like, to do anything. How do you write articles that are so long? How do you do so much research? And
Do you have crypto?
oh yeah, probably too much. I took part in the 2013 bull run, doubled or tripled my money or something, and I got out.
Do you ever read your Amazon reviews?
Oh God, this is gonna hurt. This is really gonna fucking hurt.
Life advice that doesn't suck. That's what you get from reading his books, his newsletter, or watching him on stage. He sold 14 million copies worldwide, and his work has been translated into more languages than you can imagine. 65. He's smart, funny, and authentic. But this comes, as always, with a price. He says, "Many consider my work to be crude and unnecessarily confrontational. But I write the way I do because my goal is to challenge our cultural notions around emotions, vulnerability, shame, and sexuality. To do that effectively, sometimes you need to shock people or be contrarian." Mark, welcome to the Stakeborg DAO Talks.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
To start, I would like tell me one question you get all the time and you fucking hate it.
What do you give a fuck about, or what don't you give a fuck about? That's probably the number one. I'm just like, this again. All right.
And now tell me the last question you found like super interesting.
um, I tend to get really excited in interviews when people want to talk about kind of the meta game of content creation, publishing, branding, just being online business in general. Most interviews I do are so focused on the book content itself. But I'm an entrepreneur. I started blogging in 2007. I started online business in 2008. My publishing career has happened in the second half of my career. So I get really excited to kind of nerd out on the business side of things.
Okay, let's see how I will do. do you do you enjoy being a contrarian, or you do it because it's necessary?
I think it is necessary. First of all, like I think it's important. Like, we need people in our culture who are willing to say the uncomfortable things that need to be said. Um, and so I'm happy philosophically to be that person a lot of times, but it's not always fun. Um, there are absolutely points in my career where I've started writing something and I'm like, oh God, this is gonna hurt. This is really gonna fucking hurt. But you feel like it needs to be said. So there's no regrets, but it's not always fun. Oops.
When have you I've seen I've watched a clip when you were discussing purpose, and I was curious, when have you found your purpose, and when have you actually realized that that's definitely my cup of tea? Because usually we realize years after we start something that actually this is our cup of tea, or it was instantly.
No, it was not instant for me. Um, it's funny because ultimately I think, what we generally consider purpose, it's something that comes so naturally to us that we don't even realize we're doing it. So for me, like, I originally attempted to start a number of like e-commerce businesses and affiliate marketing businesses. Um, and so I had a bunch of websites, and for me, the goal of those websites, I started writing because I just wanted to get traffic to my affiliate marketing websites. Um, and back in 2008, 2009, like, blogging was the big way to do that. It was the big way to like attract traffic. So I started blogging back then, and it took like 2 years for me to kind of realize that I was actually really good at the blogging thing, and people really liked my writing. And I was kind of mediocre at all the other stuff. And it, a big aha for me was when I started meeting other people, I guess, in my industry, and they just kept asking me questions about writing. How do you
Mhm.
write articles that are so long? How do you do so much research? And in my head, I'm like, everybody does this, right? Like, this is easy. This is just like, it comes so naturally to me that I didn't realize that I was doing something that most other people don't. And so I think, finding what feels very meaningful and important to you, it's difficult, not because it's like so far out in the world. It's because it's like right under our nose and we can't see it because it's like right here. Um, so I think that's, when I talk to people who are kind of struggling with this area of their life, I one of the first things I ask them is, I say, what do you uh what do you do with your free time that you don't even realize, like, that time just passes and you don't even realize that you're doing it, because often it is such like a basic part of our day-to-day life that we don't even
Mhm.
stop to consider, like, oh, that could be my job.
So it could, maybe we need, I think, in order uh to find this purpose faster, I think maybe we need a feedback loop, because otherwise it's difficult to realize what we consider what we don't consider work, what others would consider work if they would do what we are currently doing.
Yeah, I think having smart people around you to give you feedback is important, and I think also too, it's just people have a very limited. I don't want to say limited, but I think we often have very preconceived notions of, like, what we're capable of doing and what is acceptable to do. Um, it's not. Uh, sometimes, like, what feels most meaningful for us is actually kind of creating our own path. And I think a lot of people get stuck trying to find purpose in by following other people's paths, and it's like
Hmm.
you're never really. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be much harder to feel a sense of purpose and meaning if you're just kind of copying what other people are doing. It is the act of taking that risk and trying something completely new for yourself that is meaningful, that gives you a sense of purpose, that gives you a sense of, like, oh, this is what I should be doing. It's that individuality. So it's interesting because purpose kind of, it intersects with a lot of these other psychological issues, that people have, of um, anxiety or courage to try something different, the willingness to be rejected or to embarrass yourself in front of others, the willingness to disappoint your friends and family. I think a lot of those issues are actually what prevent people from finding um, meaningful work and activity in their lives.
Have you had imposter syndrome after you realized what's your purpose?
Oh, all the time.
Seriously?
uh, yeah, I got it. So I got this question recently. I do monthly webinars for my website members, and I got this question a couple months ago. Somebody asked, they said, when does imposter syndrome finally go away? And I was like, if it goes away, I haven't found it yet. I think it's, the thing that changes is more, you just get used to it. You just understand that it's like this voice in your head that you learn to stop listening to. You're like, oh, it's that voice again. It clearly it doesn't know what it's talking about because I've done very well now. But that the voice never shuts up. The voice is always like, you know,
So
waking you up
how
in the middle of the night.
so how do you learn to live with it?
I think, like anything, some of it is practice, but it's kind of like, you almost get desensitized to it. It's the same thing as any other kind of like anxiety or insecurity, right? It's like the first time you get up and speak in front of a room, it's terrifying, but you do it 10, 20 times. And it's not that you're not anxious anymore. Like, you still have anxiety, but you're just so much more well adapted to it that it doesn't affect you as strongly. And I think it's the same thing with imposter syndrome. It's like, every time I sit down to write another book, uh, it's just like this constant, like, nobody's going to read this. This is stupid. Nobody likes this. Like, you're a one-hit wonder. You got lucky. But it's now that I'm like 4 or 5 books into my career, I just understand that that's part of the process. Like, that's just it's what everybody's head does when you start, a large creative project. So yeah, you just kind of get used to it.
I've heard you speaking about the Jung's shadow, a concept that I heard Robert Greene speaking about as well. And I was curious, is it the same with the shadow? You learn to live with it?
Yeah, I think it's Jung's whole thing was like, you integrate the shadow, and I think a big misconception that people have is that once you become aware of kind of these darker, uglier sides of yourself, that they go away. But actually, what happens is they don't go away. You just kind of like
Decrease the
get used to
volume?
it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. They decrease the volume. What used to be like a screaming loudspeaker in your ear just becomes like background music at a certain point. And yeah, it's still not pleasant, but it doesn't prevent you from like being the person you want to be after a while.
What's one thing that you decrease the volume, that you found and then decrease the volume in order to thrive with your career, with your life, relationships?
It's a good question. I think it's a lot of things. I think uh, having a good support network, so good friends, family members, people you trust who will be honest with you, so like for me, my wife is actually a very integral part of my creative process, not in that she like gives me ideas, but it's like if I'm working on an idea and I start having that imposter syndrome, she is like the most trusted person in my life, and I really respect her opinion, that I can go and tell her that idea or show her a chapter or something, and she'll give me very honest feedback. And so knowing it's almost like a little bit of a safety net, so it's
Mhm.
like sometimes I'll start getting caught up in my head, and then I go show something to her and she's like, no, this is really good, like you should keep going with this. It kind of calms me down. um, so I think having people in your life that you can do that with. I also think it's important. It's I have this concept that I wrote about in an article a long time ago, called identity diversification. So if the only thing you care about in your life is one thing, then your emotional health and your well-being is going to be very much attached to how that one thing is going.
Mhm.
um, and so you're going to have there's going to be a lot more emotional volatility. This actually ties into investing in crypto very well. The same way you want to diversify your portfolio of investments so that you can withstand more volatility, without going broke. You want to diversify the things that you care about in your life across many different people and areas of interest, so that if one goes to shit, you still have things in your life that feel like that can bring you happiness and make you feel good. And so it's with something like the imposter syndrome of, I don't know, starting a business or writing a book or whatever. um, if that's the only thing you have in your life, it's going to be emotionally grueling to go through it. But if you've got great relationships in your life, you've got some good hobbies, you have some other interests that you care about, um, if the business falls apart, or if the book ends up being terrible, like, it hurts, but it doesn't wreck you
Yeah.
completely.
In one of your videos, you said, and let me quote you: the most mind blowing truths in life are paradoxes. And I was like thinking and thinking and fucking thinking. And tell me, tell me the most interesting one and another one which seems the most counterintuitive.
It's interesting. I don't know. I feel like a lot of these are going to be personal, right? Like, but
That's good.
some of
That's
the
good. Personal
so,
is good.
so yeah, yeah. So some of the ones that I find the most interesting, or just kind of marvel at, um, it I guess the most impactful one in my life, because I come from a background. I started out writing dating and relationship advice, and one of the first big realizations for me was like that there's this crazy thing with human nature where, when it comes to like interpersonal relationships, the the person who tends to be less invested emotionally is the one who gets the most affection and respect and admiration. And that like fucked with me for a long time. And I found that very hard to like understand, or I actually spent a lot of time writing to try to like understand why that was. Um, on a more philosophical level, it's like I remember when I was in high school, I took like did psychedelics for the first time. I had this realization that like the only constant is change. And I remember being like 16 and being like, whoa, dude. but there's like there's a lot of like kind of fundamentally philosophical truths like that it still just kind of puts your brain into this like loop. But yeah, I think the interpersonal stuff was actually this stuff that was most impactful. Or it's like, or another version of that same interpersonal paradox is like the more you try to make people like you, the less likely they are going to like you, which is just such a weird thing. It doesn't map onto like what we're used to in the rest of the
Mhm.
world. Like it's if you try to get good at programming, that's how you get good at programming. If you try to become a good artist, that's how you become a good artist. But if you try to make everybody like you, then they all fucking hate you. Like that's so weird. Like that human minds work that way.
Speaking of books and imposter syndrome, I'm curious, do you ever read your Amazon reviews?
um, Not anymore. Oh man, no, 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 no. I try to not read my reviews. Period. And first of all, I have to say something. Amazon has this weird. I don't know what's up with their algorithm or what it is. There is a bias in the human mind that we tend to value negative information as being
Yeah.
more valuable than positive information.
It kind
But
of
it's funny if
makes
you,
sense, because we want to be careful not to
yeah,
get killed by the lion in the bushes. So whenever we go and invest some
yeah,
money, we want to see, okay, I know why I would buy your books, but let me see why I wouldn't buy your books, right?
exactly, exactly. So there's a weird thing with Amazon reviews where it's like you'll have books. Like I think my books have like 80-85% positive reviews, but then if you like look at the top voted up like upvoted reviews, it's just people shitting all over me. Like massive, massive, like this guy's a fucking idiot. Don't buy this. So yeah, I stay far away, far away.
We live the longest, we are the healthiest, and we are having maybe we are the most entertained generation ever, and still
Mhm.
we suffer from depression. I think the suicide rate for kids between 11 and 14 is higher than ever. I'm not
Yeah.
sure everyone has, I don't know, an answer, but I'm curious to know your take. Why is this happening?
So this is another example of a paradox that I think a lot about, is that when you look at mental health data, whether it's suicide rates, depression, anxiety, um, prescription drug use, drug overdoses, not only is it highest in like more affluent countries, but you can even like within the countries, like within the United States, these problems like suicide, drug overdoses, all these things like are in the wealthiest, most
Hmm.
affluent parts of the country. Um, I personally, the conclusion I came to on that is that when life is very difficult, like if you think of Maslow's pyramid,
Hmm.
when you're like worried about the bottom of the pyramid, like you're just trying to survive. And so while life is very, very difficult, meaning is simple. Meaning is get food, survive, protect my family. Like that's pretty much it. Like you don't really have the luxury of thinking or worrying about anything past that. It's like only once you get past those lower levels into the upper levels of like, okay, I've got a bunch of extra money. How should I invest it?
Hmm.
I've got a ton of friends and opportunities in my career. What should I pursue? I've got a bunch of great relationships, but I don't know who I should spend time with. Like suddenly, it's like the abundance brings a lot of um, psychological uncertainty with it, and it brings a lot of questions of meaning, because now it's actually very complicated to figure out what's worth doing and what's worth pursuing in your life, and you've got all these options, and
Yeah.
it seems like whatever you pick, suddenly the other ones seem like they were a lot better and you fucked up by picking this one. Um so yeah, I think we almost trade like physical hardship for psychological hardship. Like that's kind of like a subtle trade-off that happens once we develop as a society. That's my theory, at least.
It seems like our brain is not comfortable with so much safety. So we are going back to the woods trying to find some new challenges and get some new danger. And I have the feeling that our brain is obviously is overwhelmed with information, obviously is
Yeah.
overwhelmed with options, overwhelmed with all kind of things that we can do, and overwhelmed with other things other people can do, and then we got obsessed because we would like to do the same things other wealthy people are doing.
Yep.
So I think there is a contagion between wealthy people, uh because you don't have much to worry about, and you see your neighbor who is rich and he's like always smiling because he's like fucking high all the time, and you are like, well, I'm as wealthy as he is, but look at how happy he is, and I'm like fucking sad all the time and depressed. So why not try to go on drugs as well?
Yeah. Yeah, and it plays into the human biases, right? Where it's like the grass is always greener, which is
Yeah.
not true. It's just that's what our brain automatically assumes. So it makes sense that when you have tons of abundance, that you're just going to start suffering from grass is always greener all the time, um, which is what I think happens for a lot of people. That's FOMO basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you discussed with Tom Bilyeu, you said, let me find the quote. Okay, your concept of yourself is built out of the narratives that we create out of experience. So if you want to change how you feel about yourself, you need to peel back those layers of narrative and start getting down into the deepest, earliest ones. My question is, when have you realized that, and how have you felt the more you went down the rabbit hole?
Well, that for me, that was just straight up therapy. Um, I was a fairly emotionally dysfunctional person um, when I was a young adult, and eventually I found my way into therapy. And and it was very effective for me. It was like one of the best things I did in those years. But it was funny because it's just the way my mind works. I was very curious of like, why is this? How is this helping? Why is this helping? Like, why is like talking about my parents for hours every week? Why is this actually making me feel better? And that was kind of the conclusion that I came to, is that like what you're actually doing is, you know, our understandings of ourselves is essentially just a series of stories that we've told ourselves. And like anything, not all those stories are going to be completely accurate. Those stories are, especially if those stories have existed since we were very young and our understanding of the world was much worse. Um, so it's like if you're walking around with this horrible story about yourself that you started telling yourself when you were like 9 years old, um, it's very, very useful to be able to go back, revisit that story. First of all, identify that you have that story, and then go back, revisit it. And then as an adult, start noticing how it doesn't completely make sense. It's a
Mhm.
story of a 9-year old. So it's very incomplete and overly simplified. Um, so I think it's, when I look at uh, pretty much anything that's therapeutic, whether it's therapy itself or journaling. I think journaling, like the benefits people get from journaling, is very similar. It's when you write out your thoughts on a page, you're able to see these narratives that you've built your identity around, as if they're not your own.
Mhm.
It's like something about getting them outside of your head
Yeah.
allows you to evaluate them a little bit more impartially. I think meditation can do this for people as well. Um, so I think it's, pretty much any process of like healing or growth, requires this reevaluation of our narratives and understanding of ourselves.
Speaking of meditation and journaling, I know you are a fan of the book Atomic Habits.
Mhm.
Um, I love it as well. Uh, Tell me one routine that you struggle to implement in your life.
Dude, my Achilles heel is just
Don't say
fucking.
cold showers.
No, you know what's funny is I have no problem with cold water. Like I did the cold shower thing. Whatever. I think it's overrated. I think. But I have no problem. Like I'll get in a cold tub like in a second. It doesn't bother me. My weakness is fucking food and alcohol, and um
In that order?
it's yes. Alcohol for me, it's more of a social thing.
Mhm.
It's very hard. Like alcohol makes me like people more. Um, so it's
Mr. Grumpy.
I yeah. So well, I'm in this horrible situation where like if I'm in a social situation with people I don't like, then the only way I can salvage it is by having a drink. And then if I'm in a social situation with people I really do like, then I'm like, well, you know what will make this better? A
Sure.
drink. So yeah, it's to me it that's hard, but for even more so than that, like I just struggle with food, man. I love food. I've been actually like my big kind of personal goals are the last couple of years has been around food and nutrition and stuff. And I'm at a point in my life where I feel like I've gotten most of the other stuff handled. Like I feel great about my productivity habits. I exercise. I've got good relationships and friendships and hobbies and stuff. Um, God damn, like it's so like when that when that pizza's in front of you, like how do you stop? I don't know how you stop. It's so fucking hard for me. I don't know why.
Dude, I'm telling you, my wife is a pastry chef, so
Oh
I
God.
feel it. I feel you.
Yeah,
I
you understand.
I will send you some photos after we finish this, and you will understand exactly why my body shape looks like this.
Oh
So yeah,
man.
yeah, man, I feel you.
I I get it.
Okay, now I'm super curious. I've asked like all the question I was curious about. These are the the questions I'm asking myself. So whenever I find someone that uh, is has this wide range of interests, I'm asking these questions as well. So I'm really curious to know your take on living forever.
It's a great question. I have, first of all, I don't know. I mean, that it's such like, it's so difficult to fathom, I think, the repercussions of living forever. So, I think the science, like the part of me that loves science and technology is super, super excited about the prospect. I think it's amazing. Um, I think the philosopher slash psychologist in me is very, very concerned. Um, Simply because I think, kind of coming back to, you mentioned like the way our mind is constructed, it's not constructed for this much safety. I really think like all these psychological mechanisms in our head that, gives us a sense of value and purpose and meaning, and like our actions have impact. Um, it's based on scarcity. Like all of our sense of value is based on scarcity, and the root of all that scarcity is the scarcity of time, or
Yeah,
the existence of death. And so as soon as you remove death, time is no longer scarce. And if time's no longer scarce, then like why the fuck do anything? um
exactly.
so that aspect of it concerns me. I think there could be potentially some very, very major and unexpected psychological side effects of life extension. Um, but I have no idea like which way that would go or what it would be like. So
I feel that we are struggling to get used to social media. So probably we need one generation to get used to not uh stay hours and hours on social media. So
yeah,
probably we need a gazillion generations to get used to the idea of, like, seriously, of
yeah,
living forever, right?
yeah,
Because so my background is in history, and I was discussing with someone this thing with living forever, and I realized, like, if we live forever, what the fuck is history?
yep,
So the concept of history dramatically, I don't think disappears, but it's completely changed, right?
yeah,
And the one I was like super against living forever because I don't see any benefit.
mm,
Eh, no, I can see the benefits, but all of them are selfish.
yes.
And but
It's a very ego driven thing.
exactly. But there was one argument that I didn't have a counter argument against it, and the argument was: imagine you are, I don't know, 200 years old. You have, like, your people. You are on your deathbed, and everyone that you love is around you. And someone tells you, like, look, there is this small little pill, man. Just fucking take it, and you'll stay with us forever. Is there anyone who'd say no?
I don't think so, but I think there are a lot of people who say yes to things that are not good for them.
That's true.
Um, yeah, it's to me, it boils down to like very fundamental ethical questions. Uh, and when I say ethical questions, I mean like kind of basic definitions of what is good and what is bad in
Hmm.
life. Um, And yeah, I mean, I go back and forth on it. I was like you when I first heard it. I was like, "That's a disaster. Like, we should absolutely not do that." And I've kind of been pulled back to a place where I'm like pretty ambivalent now, because I feel like I see both sides. But your point about history is a great one. I also think
About religion as well, man.
there'll be no sense of urgency. Like think about this. It's like how many, like everybody knows that joke that what's that adage? It's like the amount of time you need for a project will shrink or expand
Yeah,
to how much you have.
exactly. The
It's like
maximum.
yeah, it's like imagine if it's like, okay, well, I could do this now, or I could just wait 10 years, and there's like literally no difference. I don't know. I just think it's like our brains. I think if we did do it, we would have to also concurrently develop the technology to alter like the basic mechanisms of like motivation and meaning and purpose in our brains. Um and I feel like we're like not only we're not even close to that. We're like not even having that conversation.
Do you have crypto?
Oh yeah. Probably too much. Last year I didn't have enough. This year I have too much.
When have you heard about Bitcoin and all this crypto stuff?
I heard about Bitcoin in 2013. So I took part in the 2013 bull run. Um, and at the time, I didn't take it very seriously. To me, it was like, yeah, I was like, oh, this is probably a Ponzi, so I should make sure to get out before everybody else does. And so I did. I think I like doubled or tripled my money or something, and I got out. And I thought, and then when it crashed, I was like, okay, that's over. I'll never hear about this thing again. And then obviously I heard about it a couple of years later. And when I came back, I kind of came back to crypto in 2016, 2017. And by that point, Ethereum had started, and just the ideas around the possibilities of blockchain and everything had grown and amplified quite a bit. And so that's when I really got sold on it, was 2017, of like, okay, this is a thing. And I should really pay close attention to this.
Do you have people around you that are speaking about crypto?
So a lot of my entrepreneur friends are either into it or they know a lot about it, and will talk about it. But outside of that, most people think it's either crazy or horrible or some combination of all the above.
Where do you see this going like 5 years from now?
I think so. I think this is kind of speaking of being contrarian, I think this is a little bit of an unpopular opinion within the crypto community. But I think a lot of this, the culture of crypto, of that it's kind of this subversive um, technology, it's going to undermine a lot of institutions and structures, if not entire governments. Um, I think a lot of that's going to go away, or it's going to have to go away, because here's the thing that nobody one of the big narratives of this last bull run was, institutional investors are coming, hedge funds are coming, VC funds are coming. And yeah, they did a little bit, but for like the real money to come into this technology and this ecosystem, and for things to actually like really scale, we're going to have to integrate with the pre-existing networks and institutions. Like there is going to need to be sensible regulation to prevent all the scams and Ponzi's. There's going to need to be realistic oversight, and there's going to need to be integration with traditional banks and financial institutions, for all this stuff to work. Like for the stuff we actually want to happen in the long run. I think in the short run, those things have to happen, and those are. I think my experience is most people in crypto just de facto think those are bad things. Attorney. I just think you have to be realistic. It's not really going to do all again. That's probably what needs to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we need to move on from the libertarian dream, the revolution that will change everything, more
Yeah,
to in order to have a mature um class, to have like serious people with serious investment thesis coming into this space, and to not have a market cap which is smaller than Apple market cap, for example. We need clear regulation. The only problem I see with that is that we might get a regulation we don't like, and we might find out that some projects, tokens, practices that we are used to are not allowed, are not okay, especially in the US, where you have this stupid, I would say, thing with accredited investors. So
for
we
sure.
might see some weird regulation that will do here and in one place some good stuff, but will
Yep.
break some other things in other directions, simply because you know sometimes, I mean, I think most of the times politicians don't fully get the whole picture, but they still
Oh,
want
yeah.
to regulate the environment, right?
I think a lot of what a lot of standard practices of the last 5 years in the crypto industry um, are going to be altered or ended by these regulations. And I think in the short run, that's going to hurt a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of coins that are going to get hurt, a lot of projects that are going to have to shut down, and people are going to be really angry. But I think it's probably going to be necessary for the long term health of the ecosystem. I don't know about you, but I've become very frustrated with the amount of fraud and scams that have been going on. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
dude, I'm afraid to open my MetaMask sometimes, like to do anything. You know, I'm just like, I'm afraid to fucking click anything at this point. I've been in so many discords that have been hacked. I've been like so many websites and NFTs that have been hacked. Like, it's terrifying, you know? And so I think and I hope as a community we're starting to see the need for some of this stuff. Like, you can't completely police yourself. Like,
Yeah.
it's the wild west out here. And so we do need a little bit of law and order.
Yeah, man, I fully agree with everything that you said. And but we are close to 1 hour, and I have like three more questions outside the crypto. So my
Okay.
last three questions, man. So first of all, I was pretty impressed that you are so big into crypto, to be honest. Just to finish this chapter, as in,
Okay.
I knew that you are, a few things about this industry, but dude, it's clear that you like this industry, and you are like wasting a lot of time that you could spend on writing, staying on Discord. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Keyword wasting.
so if you have to write a letter which will be opened by your granddaughter 100 years from now, what are
Mhm.
the top two perennial pieces of advice you would write there?
Oh wow.
Forever green, man.
That's a tough question. Um, well, I'm like not even gonna think about the technological implications and just try to stick to things that I think are fundamentally true, which is, you know, ultimately you are responsible for everything that happens in your life, whether or not it's your fault. And in meaning and purpose come through struggle, not from the avoidance of struggle.
Really good answer, man. What's the biggest bias human beings have, which, if changed, the world will be a better place tomorrow?
uh, I'd say confirmation bias.
Yeah, it was a low hanging fruit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would love to run that experiment.
So the last one, I will say two people, and you choose the one you like more, and you tell me why.
Mm.
Robert Greene and Jordan Peterson.
Hmm. This is actually hard for me. All right, just being honest, I've met Robert Greene. He's a real brilliant guy. He's really sweet guy. I don't know what it is. I cannot get through any of his books. I think it's just a writing style thing.
Seriously?
Yeah, I don't know why, dude. I've tried it. I literally own every single one of his books, and I have not gotten past like page 50. And I don't know what it is. Like,
You are
it's
the
the
first one who
content.
says that, man. The first
I know.
one.
No, this is no. This is an exclusive here. This is not something I say very publicly, especially because he and I share, like, a lot of my fans are fans of him, and vice versa. Um, and like I said, he's a brilliant guy, very sweet man. Um, I think it's just a writing style thing. Like, I just can't. I can't get there. Um, Peterson, I really enjoy his work. Um, but I don't agree with a lot of what he says. Peterson is kind of like my favorite thinker who who I don't agree with everything. Like, he even,
Exactly.
but what I love is that even when I don't agree with him, he makes me think a lot. So
How he
so I'll
how
go with
he builds how he builds his theories is amazing. I fully agree.
it's
I, I don't
yeah,
fucking agree with him on like 90% of what he says, but
yeah,
dude, he is so good at finding the right words in the right sequence in order to actually push you to question your own assumptions.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'll go with Peterson on that.
Ryan Holiday and James Clear.
Ah. So they're both friends, and I hope neither of them sees this because the other one will get mad. Oh, oh man, this hurts.
I'm so happy I put them together.
I know, man. No, they're both great dudes. All three of us are friends. So, um, do I have to pick one? It's funny because they're very different people, and I
You can
admire
you
them
you
both.
can pick none.
Okay. Well, I admire them both for very different reasons. So I'm having trouble, like, so like James, I think James's genius is that I don't know if I've met anybody who is able to zero in on like the highest leverage action or behavior and then do it. Um like, James is just the personification of no bullshit. And you see that in his writing.
Yeah.
It's super clear. It's very concise. There's no fluff. There's no like long stories. Um, but he's like that as a person too. Like, he is just so like just knows how to zero in on like the little thing that matters. And I really admire that. Um, Ryan is just like a fucking, he works like a machine. Like, I don't like, he's so prolific. He's so tireless. He does so many speaking events. He does, like, seriously, I hang out, and he has two kids. And I'm like, and he runs a bookstore. And I'm like, when do you sleep? How do you, like, this is ridiculous. And he
And
runs like
he
8 miles every day.
and he goes hunting, and he's like he has time for
Yeah.
for hobbies, and he has time to say no 100 times, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's living like two lives in
But
one.
yeah, if he's saying no to anything, I'd love to know what he's saying no to, because he does more shit than in a week than I do in a year. So yeah, that's what I admire in Ryan.
Elon Musk, Peter Thiel.
This one's easy, so I'll go with Musk. I'm a Musk fanboy. I respect Thiel, um, but yeah, I'm a Musk fanboy. So
Donald Trump and a bag of shit.
another easy one, bag of shit. Um, I don't know if you could find anything that I would pick Donald Trump over.
Mark, tell everyone where they can find you.
So website is markmanson.net. You can find there's hundreds of free articles there. I've also got a school membership with a bunch of online courses. So check that out. And then obviously the books. The books are everywhere, every bookstore. So yeah, check it out.
Dude, with your book titles, you killed all the editors around the world because they tried to find a decent way to translate fuck in every language. So
how did it turn out in Romanian?
I don't know. I
Did
don't
it?
know. I read them in English, so I really
Oh,
don't
okay.
know. Uh,
Okay. I'm always curious because some languages they keep the profanity and some languages don't, and it's always
seriously,
interesting to hear.
they
Yeah,
never do it in Romania. They never do it. I don't know for your books, but in general, because I
yeah,
know the titles in English, and then I see some stupid, not clear titles because they tried to translate them, and the book is losing the whole juice because of that idiotic
yeah.
title. So,
I've
Mark,
heard.
thanks a lot for stopping by.
Absolutely, man. This was great.
Guys, now that I had my chance to discuss with Tom Bilyeu and now with Mark, all I have to do is to find a way and speak with Ryan Holiday, and then I can retire. I hope you found it useful. Bye bye.